Good morning, Hank. It's Tuesday. Over the weekend, someone told me that I'm one of the 10 best-selling writers of the 21st century, which came as a real surprise to me, not least because I'm currently wearing 2 different shirts featuring my own face. Which reminds me, we've got some great new stuff up at pizzamas.com, and you can get this DM screen today only for 20% off. But anyway, this whole thing got me thinking about my incredible good fortune as a writer, but is it good fortune or is it something else? Well, today I want to talk about what I think actually drives success. So first off, there's something that isn't luck or hard work, structural advantage or whatever you want to call it. Like, it would be vastly less likely if my novels were written and published in Estonian that they would have become huge global bestsellers, because there are just fewer people translating Estonian into English and other languages. So there is a structural advantage to writing in English, but that's just one of a billion structural advantages, from race and class to gender identity and health. Now, I guess some of that could be constructed as luck, but I think of luck as random chance, whereas all of the dices that I just referred to are kind of weighted, and in most cases they are weighted in my direction. And that is inevitably one of the major reasons I've had so much success as a writer. Now, if you throw a weighted die, it won't land on 6 every time or whatever, but it will land on 6 more times than random chance would dictate, and that's the kind of structural advantage that I've enjoyed, and because I've enjoyed it for my entire career, that it's easy to be blind to. Then there's another factor that often goes unmentioned: skill or talent or whatever. I don't know exactly how talent works, but I do think that to some extent it is a real thing. Like, when I was in middle school, I was unbelievably passionate about soccer. I played extremely hard, I practiced all the time, and I was not good. I simply don't have the physical coordination necessary to succeed as a soccer player. Similarly, I love reading science fiction and fantasy, but I can't write it. It just doesn't play to my skill set. Admittedly, many skills can be learned, but I also think our gifts incline us in certain directions. I might be wrong about this, but that has been my experience. Another thing we don't talk about when it comes to success: nobody knows about my failures. They don't know about the 2 novels I have written and discarded in the 8 years since I last published a novel. They don't know about the times I've been rejected. What they see is the work that makes it, the work that survives into success, which is a tiny fraction of my overall writing. In fact, one of the ways I make myself write is by telling myself, it doesn't matter if nothing you write today is good, because it's not going to end up in a book anyway. Like, over 90% of the words I type don't end up in a book, but I remember when I was young and I would look at author photos and read their novels or whatever, I felt that it was impossible for me to ever be like them because I was such a failure and they were such successes, but in fact, I just wasn't seeing their failures. But then there's luck. How much of my success is luck? All of it. I was lucky to start writing young adult novels when I did, because there was lots of support for new authors, and paths to success had already been forged by independent booksellers and librarians and other authors, and I was lucky to get a job at Booklist magazine, where I met my mentor Eileen Cooper. But even so, my first 2 books were not particularly successful. They won prizes, which was lucky, but they both sold fewer than 10,000 copies in their first year. That Looking for Alaska has hung around now for over 20 years is not primarily because it was like the best YA book of 2005. I don't think that it was, but primarily because Nerdfighteria happened, which has been the great luck of my professional life. And with The Fault in Our Stars, I was especially lucky. I was lucky that Nerdfighteria got behind the book in such a big way before it was even published. I was lucky that adults were starting to read YA novels. I was lucky that my publisher got behind it in a big way, and I was lucky that Time magazine called it the best book of the year. I was lucky that they made a movie and that the movie did well. Like, I don't labor under the delusion that The Fault in Our Stars was actually the best book of 2012. Mary Oliver's A Thousand Mornings came out that year. So did Catherine Boo's Behind the Beautiful Forevers. Petitios just won some weird lottery involving timing and chance and catching a cultural moment. Did I also work hard? Yes, I spent most nights and weekends in my 20s reading and writing and trying to get better at this thing I loved so much. Although one of the frustrating and interesting things about creative work is that you work just as hard on the failures as you do on the successes, which indicates that it can't possibly all be hard work. In terms of effort, there's no difference between the novels sitting in metaphorical drawers and the ones that sold tens of millions of copies. So yeah, I have worked hard, I still work hard. There is joy and meaning for me simply in the work itself, because it allows me to visit rooms in my mind that nothing else does. And I intend to do that work for the rest of my life, because writing is my way of thinking and my way of responding to the strange and often terrifying curse of consciousness. Curse or gift? Guess it depends on the day. Anyway, Hank, to me, luck versus skill versus hard work versus privilege is kind of a false dichotomy, or I guess a quadotomy. The truth is, it's all luck, it's all work, it's all privilege. Like, there's no separating this stuff out. But what often happens with successful people is that they want to tell a story that makes sense, and so they make it all about their hard work or their special insight. It boils down to successful people wanting to feel like on one level or another they deserved their success. Not least because that means they deserve the spoils of their success. But I just don't think deserving, or not deserving for that matter, is the right framework for life. Like, I don't deserve to have people buy a keychain featuring my mustachioed face as a cat available only for the next few days at pizzamas.com. I also don't deserve to have OCD. Hank, you didn't deserve to have cancer. You also didn't deserve to have the #1 app in the world, because deserving is just the wrong framework. I think maybe a better framework is thinking about what we do actually deserve and how to bring about a world where people get what they deserve, because what we do deserve, of course, is our fundamental rights to love and be loved and to be treated as a full human being by our social order. Hank, great video yesterday. I know this placeless place isn't forever, but I sure am glad it's for now. I'll see you tomorrow.